I want to ask your assessment of the prevailing state of Sri Lanka's oil supply and prices.
One needs to understand how the overall macroeconomic picture for the energy sector has changed over the last couple of months. Also, this is a very strategically important point. Any serious disruption there will be felt by the whole world as far as prices are concerned, and the prices will basically go higher. There has been some relief from April peak, but let's be very clear. On the reverse side, there is some very good news. That is, Sri Lanka's gross official revenue stood approximately around 6.9 billion US dollars at the end of May. As a country, we are still heavily dependent on importing of oil.
What are your views on the longer-term impacts of these vulnerabilities?
The evidence shows a long-term structural pressure that requires proper planning. Sri Lanka's import bill and the foreign reserves will remain under pressure. Higher energy costs are directly affecting the household budget. The businesses face similar pressure. Unstable energy costs increases the risk of manufacturing. Then also the logistics. Then also the export industry. We must also protect low-income families and especially the SMEs in the country from the full impact of higher energy prices. So the message is clear. Vulnerability is structural and already affects the household and the businesses. And renewable energy supported by a strong grid and targeted protection is the way to build resilience.
Global shocks and local vulnerabilities have put Sri Lanka in a very precarious place in terms of our energy supply. We spoke about all of this and more with Suren Chandraratna. Stay tuned.
For 30 years, LMD has been the voice of business in Sri Lanka, capturing the pulse of the nation's corporate landscape through its iconic covers. Each cover tells a story, from the first edition in 1994 to the present day, narrating key moments, leaders and trends that have shaped Sri Lanka's business ecosystem. Over the years, LMD covers have featured thought leaders, business pioneers and game-changing innovations, reflecting the evolution of industries and the economy. As we celebrate 30 years, these covers represent more than just publications. They are a testament to LMD's legacy of excellence in business journalism and its unwavering commitment to being Sri Lanka's leading voice of business. LMD, Sri Lanka's voice of business, a legacy of 30 years.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. The topic of conversation today is oil prices, supply and longer-term prospects. And I'm connecting with Suren Chandraratna, the chairman of COYLE. Welcome to the show, Mr. Chandraratna.
Thank you, Ruwandi. It's a pleasure.
To start off our conversation, I want to ask your assessment of the prevailing state of Sri Lanka's oil supply and prices, given all the geopolitical tensions, the IMF fiscal targets, and of course, internal challenges that we're having.
That's a very good starting point for this discussion. And in my view, because one needs to understand how the overall macroeconomic picture for the energy sector has changed over the last couple of months. If you are looking at the current global oil prices, the crude oil is trading around 94 US dollars a barrel. And this is largely because of the tension that is in the Middle East and have simply refused to cool down. And the risk of the oil shipments passing through the Straits of Hormuz. Also, this is a very strategically important point because over 35% of all seaborne crude oil trades globally. So the seriousness of any serious disruption there will be felt by the whole world as far as prices are concerned, and the prices will basically go higher. And in this backdrop, here we have Sri Lanka. a country that is still recovering from the recent economic crisis. And our ability to absorb such a shock is frankly very, very weak as far as we are concerned. We are a near total oil importer. So the shock gets transferred directly into our trade accounts. And from there, into the pockets of our own people and our own businesses. Everyone feels the pinch. Now, if you really look at the actual numbers, between January to June this year, Sri Lanka spent approximately around 3.1 billion US dollars on fuel import alone. That's about a 58% increase when you compare it with the same period last year. So this is, if you actually break it down further, I think in April that we have spent somewhere in the range of about $880 million. And it came down to $536 million in May. And further, it came down to $465 million in June. So yes, there has been some relief from April peak, but let's be very clear. The numbers still are very high by historical standards. On the reverse side, there is some very good news. That is, Sri Lanka's gross official revenue stood approximately around 6.9 billion US dollars at the end of May. This gives a cushion we simply did not have in 2022. And that is an important difference. But the cushion is not a solution. Continued pressure on the oil prices means continued pressure on the foreign exchange and on the rupee and in the inflation. So basically, where does this all leave us? In simple terms, fuel prices are stable for now, but the risk of fresh shocks remains very real because as a country, we are still heavily dependent on importing of oil. So, Ruwandi, that's basically what it is.
In addition to the shocks that you were talking about, we've also seen how price rigidities have worsened the impact of all the fluctuations we're seeing in terms of global oil prices. How can Sri Lanka work around this?
Say, as a lot of people ask me whether the Sri Lanka's cost reflective pricing formula for fuel is working, actually working, or is it just some kind of a mathematical thing that's been put out there? My only honest opinion is it is a yes and a no. It is a mathematically disciplined, calculated pump prices for petrol and diesel have tracked official prices within the rupee, which is a real achievement after years of loss making and subsidies. But the formula has one flaw. It passes global volatility through to the consumers instantaneously with no smoothing mechanism at all. So the discipline is real, but the shock is also. So, in my opinion, let me offer some points on this. See, first, rolling average prices stabilization approach. Basically, instead of reacting to daily price swings, a smooth input cost over say period of about say 4 to 6 weeks or something like that, that cushions both the spikes and the drops without reintroducing the kind of loss-making subsidies that got us into this trouble in the first place. Discipline and stability is not the opposite. Actually, we just need the right mechanism. Now, second, CPC and CPETCO should also be hedging in to their procurement strategies. Using forward contracts during calmer pricing windows and locking a position of supply would be a meaningful thing to do. See, our exposure is a sudden shock, like in Iran and Israel escalation we are watching right now. And our strategic fuel reserves remain thin. Now, that is another problem. Expanding storage capacities would lead the state to buy opportunistically and not opportunistically when the prices are low, instead of us buying on a panic procurement when the prices, when there's a crisis and the prices are high. So this is actually not a luxury. This is a basic risk management that we need to adopt. And the fourth point would be we need to diversify our supply sources, pursue long term government to government contracts. Randi, see, rather than we are learning leaning so heavily on spot market cargoes, that reduces our exposure in the single choke point risk. Just as importantly, improving our payment terms as well. But none of these requires abandoning the current reflective formula. It's there and it is good. It's actually about making the formula smarter. Discipline on also on the pricing side, and paired with the smarter procurement and the stronger reserves. This is what we can protect both the fiscal responsibilities and everyday Sri Lankan pump price.
And Mr. Chandraratna, if I ask you, what are your views on the longer term impacts of these vulnerabilities?
When we talk about the oil prices and the vulnerability, we should not treat it as a short term problem. The evidence shows a long term structural pressure that requires proper planning. The World Bank expects the crude oil to average between somewhere in the region of $86 to about $115 per barrel in 2026. Even at that lower end, Sri Lanka's import bill and the foreign reserves will remain under pressure. This is simply a price spike that can't wait out. It is a risk we must prepare for. See, the impact on the household is already clear. The Colombo Consumer Price Index rose by I think something like 5.8 points in April. Transportation contributed 1.7 points, while the housing and the electricity added about another 1.1 points. Higher energy costs are directly affecting the household budget. So the businesses face similar pressure. Unstable energy costs increases the risk of manufacturing. Then also the logistics. Then also the export industry, and even new foreign investment as well, because they are also watching what's going on. So even when the prices do not rise, uncertainty can delay investment, and that can have a major impact to the economy in the country. We must also protect low-income families, and especially the SMEs in the country, from the full impact of higher energy prices. See, without the support and cost-reflective pricing will place the greatest burden on these least able to absorb. Yeah, they actually can't absorb. Since some of the industries, some of the SMEs are going through a lot of problems because they don't have the capability of absorbing it. So the message is clear. Vulnerability is structural and already affects the household and the businesses. And renewable energy, supported by a strong grid and targeted protection, is the way to build resilience.
It's time now to take a very short break, but we soon be back to talk more about oil prices and supply.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with Suren Chandraratna, the chairman of COYLE. We spoke about Sri Lanka and you mentioned SMEs. How should businesses overall, how should businesses handle these kind of energy related challenges, especially in the long run?
I get asked often about the businesses, especially the SMEs, as you just did. Especially SMEs can actually do what they can do about the energy cost is not mainly not within their control. But the truth is, you can't control the international prices, but you can control the exposure that you have for it. So if I just give you some points, see, start with an energy efficient audit. It sounds very basic, but it's the fastest and the lowest risk way to cut the cost line. You can't otherwise manage. Most businesses are surprised how much the fuel and the electricity intensity can save off simply by understanding what's going on. Where are we spending the energy cost? So, second is to look at a captive renewable energy generation where it is feasible. Say rooftop solar and the power purchase agreements have become genuinely cost effective. This is not a a gesture anymore. It is a sound financial planning, and it aligns with where the country is heading. Now, Sri Lanka is targeting 70% electricity, renewable electricity by 2030. Businesses that move early on, this will be able to be ahead of the curve and not play a catching up game. And third, to build a price volatility into your financial planning. See, don't just budget the energy costs as what it is today. You need to have a flexibility in that, because we know that it is not stable. As a result, we need to bring it in, and the budget with a sensitivity band around them. So for anyone who's in logistics, or that is a huge part of our businesses and the community, reduce the dependency on diesel, route optimization, maybe fleet modernization. These you might need the help of the banks and the government, but fleet modernization, and also phased in the EV adaptation for the last mile at least, and short haul operations, all practical and achievable steps, but not distant ambition, not very drastic ambitions also. And also use chambers like COYLE for pooling and bargaining power for bulk fuel and energy procurement, and sharing the efficiencies, know-hows, cross-member understandings, and presenting the unlifted business voices and energy pricing policies is some of the points that can be discussed. So none of these require businesses to wait for policy and change. There are steps we can take now, and together turn the energy volatility into something that happens to us, into something we can actually manage. So I don't know whether I answered your question there, but that's basically what I feel about it.
Mr. Chandraratna, as a concluding question, if I ask you, what are your recommendations in terms of policy for Sri Lanka to make sure that we are resilient in terms of any external shocks and internal challenges in terms of our energy?
Sri Lanka's energy story these past few years has been one of resilience under pressure. But resilience by crisis management isn't the same thing as resilience by design. If we want to protect our economy from the next shock, we need to move from reacting to planning. Let me touch on a few priorities. First, pricing. our cost reflective formula has restored fiscal discipline, and that's been been very important. But we can pair it with transparent price smoothing mechanisms, so the household and the businesses are not hit with the fuel with a full force daily with the international price swings. We don't have to choose between discipline and stability. We can have both. Second, renewables. We have a pipeline of 3,330 megawatts of wind and solar combined. That's a good target on paper, but it is only reduces our oil dependency once it's built. Right now it's on paper, built, connected, and there is the backup grid mechanism, the mechanism for the storage and the hydropower flexibility, and so on. So ambition without infrastructure is just a number. The third point I would say is the fuel security. We remain exposed to a single corridor. That's the Strait of Hormuz. See, our energy imports, that's the structural risk. We need a large strategic reserve, genuine diversification of our supplies and sources from other countries, so that one disruption can't distract how our economy functions. So this is this old saying that don't put all your eggs in one basket. So it's the same thing here. So fourth is our reserves. At around $6.4 billion as of July, our foreign exchange position is healthier than what it has been in years. But that shouldn't rest oil prices staying calm, because it won't. We need to build it strategically, and through export diversification, tourism growth, and strong remittance flows, and so on. And the final point is that one that is close to my work at COYLE. We need to be embedded energy resilience into our industry policy. Target tax incentives and concessions, financing for SMEs, and export adoption efficiencies, and renewable can turn today's vulnerability into tomorrow's competitive edge. So these are priorities and reinforcement that reinforces each other. And real energy resilience isn't about surviving the next shock. It is about building an economy that is capable of handling the shocks.
We've been in conversation with Suren Chandraratna, the chairman of COYLE. Thank you very much, Mr. Chandraratna. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much, Ruwandi.
And thank you to everyone for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. Thank you for watching and stay safe.